We are here to give you an update from the whole federal government, the whole community, update on preparations for Hurricane Florence. This morning the briefing is on the record. As a reminder, please keep in mind our ASL interpreter here for your camera shots. We'll just jump right into it. I'd like to introduce FEMA Administrator Brock Long.
Hey, good morning. Appreciate everybody being here. Appreciate the job that the media has been doing to get the preparedness message out to our citizens today. But before we get started on Floyd, I'm very aware of a recent article that in regards to an ongoing investigation by the OIG in regards to FEMA vehicle usage. Every day we work very closely with the OIG and GAO to make meaningful improvements and make sure that we're running programs and policies according to regulation, and bottom line is we'll continue to fully cooperate with any investigation that goes on and own up to any mistakes and push forward and keep going, keep moving on. But here's the thing, regardless of an article, right now I am 100% focused on Floyd, and that's exactly where our attention needs to be from the standpoint of the life safety mission. So with that, we're going to invite in our federal partners. Florence, excuse me. Yeah.
Would you say, though, do you feel confident that you are following the statutes and the laws as it relates to the use of the government vehicle?
Yeah, so we're going to get to Floyd Florence, excuse me. We're going to get to Florence, and we're going to push forward and concentrate on the life safety issues. Thank you.
We will have time for Q&A at the end. Thanks, Renee.
Right. Thanks, guys. Got Linda? All right. All right. So in regards to Florence, just because the wind speeds came down, the intensity of this storm came down to a Cat 2, please do not let your guard down. The storm surge forecast associated with this storm has not changed. It has remained the same. Here's why. As the system's encroaching on the coast, the wind field is expanded. So what you're going to start seeing in a matter of hours, in the next coming hours, is these wind bands that far precede the center of circulation are going to start pushing water up against the coast, but more importantly, up the back bay and inlet areas. Storm surge is not a problem just along the coastline. It's going to be a major problem way up into the streams and tributaries that come out of sound areas that push up into the sounds, like the Pamlico Sounds on the west side of the Pamlico Sound. This is a very dangerous storm. Storm surge is why many of you have been placed under evacuation, and we are asking citizens to please heed a warning. Your time is running out. The ocean is going to start rising along the coast and in the back bay and inlet areas and the sound areas within a matter of hours. Your time to get out of those areas and storm surge inundation is coming to a close. I cannot emphasize that enough. With that, the other thing that's going to happen is not only are we going to see high winds, 110 mile an hour sustained winds coming upon the coast, the wind field is large. There are hurricane force winds that extend far out from the center of circulation that will not only inundate the coast, but you're going to see some high inland winds as this storm starts to come in and push into the coast. Coupled with that is copious amounts of rainfall as the system's pulling a lot of moisture out of the ocean. You're already seeing rain bands come along the Carolina shoreline. And unfortunately, these rain bands are going to be with us for several days. The forecasters are basically indicating feet of rain, not inches, in portions of the Carolinas and into Virginia. So this is a very dangerous storm. Inland flooding kills a lot of people, unfortunately, and that's what we're about to see. So please keep that in mind. The other thing is that I want everybody to know that FEMA and our federal partners have fully pre-positioned in support of our state and local partners. Here again, we are here to help our governors achieve their response and recovery goals. Emergency management is a team sport. It is a whole community effort. As this system pushes through right now, we're focused largely on life safety, supporting evacuation movements, supporting mass care. As this system pushes through, starts to exit the Carolinas and Virginias, and the threat ceases, we're going to be focused on stabilizing what we call community lifelines. For example, we've got to quickly understand the damage that's been done to the transportation systems, the communication systems, the power systems, and we are positioning and have been positioned for multiple days now to be ready to get those critical lifelines back up and stable as quickly as we can. But let me set the expectations. This is a very dangerous storm. We call them disasters because they break things. The infrastructure is going to break. The power is going to go out. It could go out for a number of days. It could go out for many weeks. It's hard to say at this point. So not only that, but many of you who have evacuated from the Carolina coastlines are going to be displaced for a while, particularly where the areas receive the highest amounts of storm surge. So, we need people to get their mindsets right that disasters are very frustrating, and it takes time to get the infrastructure back up and running, but we are going to do everything that we can to push forward as quickly as we can to get things back up and working along with our state partners in the private sector who owns a large portion of the critical infrastructure that's going to be impacted. So with that, I want to quickly turn it over to our partners over at NOAA, Dr. Neil Jacobs and Steve Goldstein. So take it away.
Okay, good morning. Florence is a Category 2 hurricane with maximum sustained winds of 110 miles an hour. It is moving northwest and is presently centered 170 miles east-southeast of Wilmington, North Carolina, and 220 miles east of Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Florence is a very large hurricane. Hurricane force winds extend outward 80 miles from the center, and tropical storm force winds extend nearly 200 miles out from the center. Florence is forecast to slow down as it approaches the coast. So even today, as we see outer rain bands from Florence move into the Outer Banks of North Carolina, landfall is not expected for another 36 hours, sometime Friday afternoon, Friday evening, or even early Saturday morning. This slow-moving, very large hurricane will bring a long-term extreme rain, storm surge, and hurricane-force wind threat to eastern North Carolina and South Carolina into the weekend. In North Carolina, we're particularly concerned about the Pamlico Sound and the Pamlico and Neuse rivers, where 9 to 12 feet of storm surge are forecast. And the beaches from the Outer Banks to the Wilmington area, 6 to 9 feet of storm surge are forecast over several astronomical high tide cycles. As far as rainfall, we're still forecasting 20 to 30 inches, possibly 40 inches or more, especially in eastern North Carolina and northeastern South Carolina. In addition to all of that, there's also a tornado watch in effect for eastern North Carolina today and tomorrow. The next advisory from the National Hurricane Center will be issued at 11 o'clock Eastern Time.
I'd just like to take an opportunity to emphasize the expanse of this storm. So the tropical storm force winds extend out 200 miles and the hurricane force winds extend out 80. This is a tremendously large storm, and when it slows down, what you'll see is this expansive wind field will pile up water along the coast in the form of a storm surge. But in addition to that, there's going to be a tremendous amount of rain. And as the storm slows down, there's going to be lots of coastal flooding. And with that, combined with the onshore flow, it's going to be very hard for this water to evacuate. So you're going to see a tremendous amount of inland flooding. I'd also like to thank the NOAA Corps officers for flying several flights into the storm collecting data to improve the forecast skill in the models. In addition to that, I'd also like to thank the Air Force for providing reconnaissance flights as well.
All right. Thanks, Doc. All right, next we have our partners with the American Red Cross, Charlie English, to give us an update on the mass care efforts underway.
Thank you, Administrator Long, and we certainly appreciate your leadership and your inclusiveness of our faith-based and private nonprofit partners on the team. So thank you very much for that. The Red Cross and other private nonprofits continue to pre-stage resources in the theater of operations in the Atlantic area. I'd just like to set a little expectations. If the public has not experienced staying in a shelter in the past, you'll be safe, but conditions are Spartan. So we'd ask you to bring your toothbrush, your pillow, other comfort items with you, and we'll keep you safe until the storm passes. And then post-landfall and post-impact, it'll be a more comfortable situation for you. Would also like to take the opportunity to say that this storm is a significant event. Our resources will be stretched. If you're fortunate enough not to be impacted, we would like to have you consider being a volunteer. You can do that at redcross.org or any other of the other fine agencies that you choose to volunteer with. Thank you.
All right. And folks, one of the most powerful arms of the whole community is the non-governmental organizations like the Red Cross. And here again, when this storm passes, this is about neighbor helping neighbor all the way up to the federal government. So if you're looking to get involved and you're not in, the Carolinas, but you're looking to get involved to help out the situation once this thing's passed, go to infoad.org. Or redcross.org. So thank you again. Next up, we have our partners with the Army Corps of Engineers, Mr. Ray Alexander.
Thank you, Administrator Long. Good morning. The Army Corps of Engineers is prepared and ready to respond to Hurricane Florence, working with our federal family members and state and local partners. To date, we have over 200 personnel engaged with over $6 million in mission assignment dollars from FEMA, 19 mission assignments, and over $13 million in federal coastal emergency dollars. In our Pacific Ocean Division continues to assess and respond to the effects from the typhoon and the hurricane out in the Pacific, while here in the Atlantic, under our Stafford Act authorities, we're postured to provide temporary power support, debris management, temporary roofing, housing, and conduct infrastructure assessments in the Carolinas, Virginia, and elsewhere where needed. As far as dams, there are 5 Corps of Engineer dams in Virginia and North Carolina. All have sufficient flood control capability to accept the effects of precipitation from Florence. We're working with the Army's Installation Management Command to ensure that dams on Fort Bragg, North Carolina, Fort Jackson, South Carolina, any effects of Florence to those dams are mitigated. In terms of navigation, we're closely working with our partners from NOAA and the U.S. Coast Guard and prepared to rapidly open federal channels and other navigation. And finally, in flood response, we are integrated with state and local county governments to provide technical assistance in flood fighting, both before the storm and after. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, our partners with the Coast Guard, Rear Admiral Austin.
Thank you, Mr. Long. The safety of the people in Hurricane Florence's path, as well as our own Coast Guard men and women and their families, are our top priority, and we are working in close concert with FEMA and our other federal, state, and local partners in preparing for the storm. In preparation for the storm, the Coast Guard has taken the following actions. The ports of Wilmington and Morehead City, North Carolina, as well as the entrance to the Chesapeake Bay, have been closed. And in preparation also for the storm, we've pre-staged shallow water response boats, as well as bringing in additional search and rescue aircraft, which will be staged in Air Station Savannah, Georgia. And we've moved aircraft out of the Air Station Elizabeth City to be ready to come in behind the storm as soon as it is safe to fly those missions. Coast Guard is also pre-staging other deployable specialized forces with additional law enforcement, security, and oil and hazardous materials response resources to be ready. And all Coast Guard small boat and cutter crews are going to be outside of the storm and ready to move in as soon as it's safe to do so. For those in the path of the storm, we urge you to do the following. Please stay off the water. Coast Guard search and rescue resources will be degraded or unavailable before, during, and immediately after the storm. Remember that social media is a great way to stay informed, but please don't use social media in order to call for help. Please call 911 or Channel 16 in order to reach out to get help. And finally, once the storm is passed, the areas will still be hazardous, so please stay in a safe location while Coast Guard and other partners assess the damage and let you know when it's safe to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have the Office of Disability Integration Coordination at FEMA, Ms. Linda Mastandria, and it's incredibly important for FEMA to help our partners do everything that we can to render the highest level of functional and access needs that we can, not only during the response phase, but also after the recovery phase. So Linda, please, would you say a few words?
Thank you. Excuse me. Good morning. So as the Disability Coordinator and the Director of the Office of Disability Integration and Coordination, our responsibility is to ensure that FEMA's programs and services are available to and accessible to people with disabilities before, during, and after disasters. And in terms of Florence in particular, we are working very closely with our partners at the state and local level, at the territorial and tribal level, with our federal partners and agencies like the Red Cross and HHS to ensure that people with disabilities have what they need during evacuation, during sheltering, pre and post landfall. So part of our coordination efforts are to ensure that we are in close communication with our state and local partners to ensure that any unmet needs that people with disabilities have during evacuation or sheltering and in terms of response and recovery are met. And we'll continue to closely coordinate with our state and local and federal partners to ensure that people with disabilities who are impacted by the storms have what they need to safely evacuate, that they have what they need in the shelters, and that they can effectively respond to and recover from the effects of the disaster.
Thank you, Linda. Appreciate that. And then finally, our next up, Environmental Protection Agency, Reggie Cheatham.
Okay.
All right, there we go.
Thank you, Administrator Long, and good morning. My name is Reggie Cheatham, the Director of the Office of Emergency Management, U.S. EPA. EPA is the lead federal agency for inland releases of oil and hazardous substances through Emergency Support Function 10 under the National Response Framework. In addition to requests for assistance from our states, tribes, and local government partners, some of the things that EPA is currently doing prior to Hurricane Florence is to determine the status of preparation at chemical, oil, and production facilities that may be in the path of the storm, and to identify any releases and discharges of hazardous substances or oil caused by the storm. The agency has identified sites under Superfund Risk Management Program and the Facility Response Plan Program for oil that may be in the current projected path of the hurricane, and we're trying to assess any pre-landfall concerns. In addition, we're working with the states, tribes, and local governments to identify drinking water and wastewater infrastructure that may be in the current path of the storm. EPA has issued 4 fuel waivers in North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, and Virginia. The purpose of the waivers is to help ensure that there's adequate fuel supply and gasoline in the affected areas until the normal supply to the region can be restored. Currently, EPA's emergency operations centers at headquarters here in Washington, D.C., in EPA Region 3, Philadelphia, and in EPA Region 4, Atlanta, Georgia, are all activated. We have teams of on-scene coordinators and equipment ready to deploy. We will continue to coordinate with and support our federal, state, tribal, and local government partners as needs arise. Thank you.
And then last up, our FEMA Spanish language update. Daniel, take it away.
Gracias, administrador. Gracias a los medios de comunicación. Como lo mencionaron, esto es una tormenta muy, muy fuerte. Trae muchos vientos, fuertes vientos y también va a dejar inundaciones de hasta 40 pulgadas de agua. Les pedimos a todos que acaten las órdenes de las autoridades locales y esa ventana para poder evacuar ya se está cerrando. También, les pedimos y les comunicamos que tenemos también constante comunicación con las autoridades locales y estatales de Virginia, Carolina del Norte, Carolina del Sur, y nuestra meta es poder restablecer comunicaciones, transportación, traer medicamentos. Ya tenemos equipos también en Carolina del Norte, Carolina del Sur y Virginia para poder ayudar en las tareas de respuesta y recuperación. Los desastres son difíciles, como lo dijo el administrador Long, por eso se llaman desastres, porque traen mucha devastación. Entonces les pedimos a todos que estén preparados y que tengan un plan de emergencias. Tenemos recursos en español para poder ayudar y apoyar, como la aplicación de FEMA. Está en español para los dispositivos Apple y Android. Pueden descargarla, es totalmente gratis y está disponible en español. También la página de listo.gov. Gracias. Thank you, sir.
Questions in regards to Florence? Yes, ma'am.
Do you guys have a cost estimate yet?
Stating your name.
Oh, Renee Marsh with CNN. Do you all have a cost estimate yet of what sort of damage this hurricane will do?
No, we don't have that. But, you know, this storm is almost a combination of Hurricane Hugo and Hurricane Floyd. It's it brings elements of both. Hugo brought high winds and inland impacts, and Floyd brought tremendous amounts of inland rainfall that caused a lot of problems. And so, if you want to look at the disaster dollars connected to either one of those events, this one has the potential, by all means, to line up with that. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Heather Timmons with Courts. This is a question for Mr. Cheatham. Staffing-wise and resource-wise, the EPA has really been targeted by the Trump administration. How has this impacted your ability to do your job and keep people safe? Are there positions that aren't filled right now that should be? Is there?
I think the easy answer to that, ma'am, is that we're staffed at the levels we were during last year's response season in 2017, where Harvey, Irma, and Maria and the California wildfires confronted us, and we're prepared to move.
All right. Yes, sir.
Taylor Populars with Spectrum News. You guys have talked a lot about how well relationships with state and local officials are, especially in the Carolinas. Are there any noticeable vulnerabilities that you've noticed or voids in that relationship, or in terms of services ahead of this, that you say this is a problem that we're actively working to address before the storm makes landfall?
No, the communication, the capabilities of North and South Carolina and Virginia are very strong, and they have some very strong and experienced local emergency management agencies as well. And as I've been saying, the successful emergency response and recovery, you can equate it to the chair you're sitting in with four legs. The four legs represent different things. One leg is the federal government, that's us, and the response we put forward. The second leg is the state and local governments. The third leg is our NGO partners, our non-governmental organization partners in the private sector that owns a lot of the private sector owns a lot of the infrastructure. And then the fourth leg is the citizen, okay? So anytime you have all four of those legs present going into a disaster, things are going to go fairly well. Now look, people are going to get frustrated because it's a disaster and stuff's broken. Let's set that expectation. But I feel confident that all four of those legs are going into this event, unlike other events that we've seen in the past. And so when that occurs, look, we're going to have some problems. We're going to have to troubleshoot some gaps that pop up. But we have solid communication with all the governors, solid relationships with the state directors, our regional partners, everybody involved. So we are truly pre-positioned as best we can be based on what we know and that the forecast provides us. All right, folks. Thank you.
So, Administrator, can I ask you a follow-up beyond Florence? You brought this up at the very beginning, and I do want to get you on the record since you brought it up. Do you feel confident that all of the laws and statutes were followed for the government use?
Yeah, good question. I would never intentionally run a program incorrectly. Bottom line is, if we made mistakes on the way a program was run, then we'll work with the OIG to get those corrected. Doing something unethical is not part of my DNA, and it's not part of my track record my whole entire career. So we'll work with the OIG to get anything corrected.
Thank you, everybody. That's all we have time for today. As always, please, with any additional questions, you can reach us at FEMA-news-desk at FEMA.dhs.gov. Please be safe and download the FEMA app. Thank you.